Welcome to Nowhere, Chapter 20. It was March by now, and the days were warming up. The nights were still cold, but the rain which had bucketed out of the sky all through the winter had stopped. The ground was still flooded though. Some of the puddles had turned into mini lakes, with water that came halfway up your thighs if you accidentally stepped in them. It was 6 o'clock on one chilly, damp evening. I had plodded back from the Champs-Élysées, feeling hopeless and miserable. There were only 3 days to go before Abu Radwan left the camp, and although I'd asked every shopkeeper up and down the whole souk, no one had a job to offer me. Even Abu Radwan had nothing much for me to do. He was only keeping me to the end out of kindness. It was my fault that I slipped in the mud and went sprawling. I'd been lost in my thoughts and hadn't looked where I was going. It wasn't easy to get up as my feet kept sliding out from under me. I looked down at myself with disgust. My legs, right up to my knees, were slimy with mud, and my hands were filthy too. I washed them off in a dirty puddle, hunched my shoulders against the evening chill, and went on. Iman pulled a face when she saw me. "You might try to be a bit more careful, Omar," she said bossily. "Those jeans will take days to dry out." "Shut up," I shouted in my head. "Just shut up and leave me alone." "Supper's ready," Ma called out. "Set out the plates, Fuad." "Where's Nadia?" Musa said suddenly. Ma's hands were full of dishes. She pointed with her chin towards a corner of the caravan. "Asleep over." "Oh, she's not there." For a long moment we all stood in horrified silence. There was nowhere to hide in the cabin. Nadia had gone. I'd been struggling to take off my muddy trousers. I yanked them back on again, ignoring the clammy cold around my legs. "She must have gone outside," I said. "I'll go and look." "But it's nearly dark." Ma's voice was sharp with panic. "She's been stolen. Someone's taken her. Ma, no one could have stolen her." Moose had struggled to his feet. "No one's been in the caravan except for us all day." Iman clapped a palm to her forehead. "She was sitting on the doorstep earlier. There were some children playing with a kitten. She was watching them." "How long ago?" rapped out Musa. I don't know, 2 hours? Longer, maybe?" "You know how much she loves cats," I said. "She must have gone out to play too. She can't have gone far." I was trying to sound calm, but inside I was shivering with fear. The light was really bad now, and it was too late and cold for small children to be outside. And the puddles, I thought with new horror. Some were so deep she could easily drown. I forced my feet into the filthy shoes and stepped outside. Musa followed me. "I'll call up the hooligans," he said. The next half hour was one of the most horrible of my life. I ran from caravan to caravan shouting, "Nadia! Nadia! It's me, Omar! Habiti, come home!" At door after door the answer was the same. No one had seen a little girl out on her own. It was impossible to go too fast for fear of slipping in the mud. I felt as if I was in a nightmare, and my legs had somehow been tied up to prevent me running. Several men had joined in the search now, bringing solar lamps out to help them. From some way away I could hear Musa calling and the high-pitched cries of the hooligans. At least there were shouts in the distance. "We found her, Omar! Where are you?" "Here, here!" I yelled hoarsely, stumbling towards the voices. Short, shadowy figures were appearing, edging around a large pool of water towards me. Musa was limping behind them, struggling to keep up. Now I could see that the boy in front was Wolf, and he was carrying a large, still bundle in his arms. Cobra ran up to me. "I was the one who found her, Omar. She's all cold and wet. She was hiding under a tent flap." "She's dead," I thought, rushing forward. Wolf slid her into my arms. I turned to carry her back to her cabin, but then I stopped confused. The tall street lamps were shooting bright reflections off the puddles, making everything look different, and the rows of white cabins seemed to stretch on forever, one exactly the same as the next. I looked down at the bundle in my arms. Nadia looked horribly pale. Her eyes were closed, but the lids were fluttering. I could see her breathing too, fast and rasping. Musa was beside me now. "Come on, what are you waiting for?" He limped off and I stumbled after him. He turned and called out over his shoulder, "Thanks, boys, and Cobra, you did brilliantly." Ma and Iman were outside the caravan, a knot of neighbouring women around them. Ma saw us coming, let out a shriek. She dashed forward, took Nadia out of my arms and darted inside. We followed her. "Thank God," the woman called out after us. "Thank God she's safe." They moved slowly away. Ma had lain Nadia down on a mattress and was rubbing her limp hands. "Open your eyes, Abiti. Nadia, look at Mama." "Is she going to die like Baba did?" Fuad asked loudly. "Don't say such a thing," Iman told him sharply. Fuad shrank into himself and went to sit on one of the mattresses, hugging his knees. As the evening went on, his question was soon in all our minds. Nadia, who'd been shaking with cold, was soon burning up with heat. Her breathing was worse, and her eyes stayed half shut. "She needs a doctor, Ma," Musa said at last. "You think I don't know that?" Ma almost screamed at him. "You think we're at home in Basra at the clinic just down the street?" A tap on the door was so gentle that I was the only one to hear it. I opened it cautiously. One of the women who'd been waiting outside with Ma was standing there. "How is the little girl?" she asked. "Would you like me to examine her? I was a nurse back home." I stood back to let her in. Ma looked up with a distracted frown. "I haven't come to disturb you, neighbour," said quickly. "You might not know that a hospital for children opened the camp last week over on the far side. And when I heard the little girl's breathing, if she's got pneumonia—" "Pneumonia!" Ma reared back with fright. "Oh, God help us!" She stopped, trying to pull herself together. "Is there really a children's hospital?" Ali nodded. "I'd go along with you, but I can't leave my baby." "No need," said Ma. She'd been kneeling over the mattress on which Nadia was lying, but now she scrambled to her feet. "Ali, you're a true friend. Omar, come with me. Iman, find her winter coat. We'll keep her wrapped up in the blanket." I was already shrugging my outside jacket back on. I was making for the door to find my shoes, but my mind was racing. What if I get lost again? The camp was huge now. What if I couldn't find the hospital? If Nadia was so sick by the time Ma and I had gone stumbling round all over the place, she might be— "Please, Ali, where is it exactly?" I asked. She'd been feeling Nadia's forehead with the back of her hand, but looked up to give me directions. "There are children's drawings all along the outside wall," she said. "And Omar, I think you'd better hurry." The hunt for Nadia had been nightmarish. That dash through the dark and the mud to the children's hospital was worse. I knew which puddles were deep and instinctively avoided them, but Ma needed guiding every step of the way. Several times she skidded in the mud and nearly fell. We were going horribly slowly. "Here, Ma, let me take Nadia," I kept saying. She wouldn't answer, but clutched Nadia even more tightly to her shoulder. I knew she'd go down, and we were only halfway to the hospital she did. I just managed to grab Nadia before she splashed into a huge puddle. She floundered around the water trying to get up. With Nadia in my arms, there was nothing I could do to help. Then I made a dreadful discovery. "Ma," I said hoarsely, "I don't think Nadia's breathing any more." "No, no," Ma was on her feet at last. "Take her, Omar, run!" I stood still for an agonizing moment. How could I leave Ma alone, lost in the camp in the dark? "Just go," she screamed at me. "Run!" Panic seized me, I took off. Words tumbled round in my head. "Nadia, little sister, don't die, don't die." All that came out of my mouth was dry, heaving sobs. The hospital was there in front of me at last. Light shone from the windows. I stumbled towards the door and gave it a kick. "Help!" I shouted. "Please, someone come!" The door opened. A woman in a blue tunic stood there. "It's my sister," I tried to say, though my throat was almost too tight to speak. She reached out and took Nadia out of my arms. The blanket fell away, and I saw my sister's face, pale and still. "What's her name?" the woman asked. "Nadia," I managed to say. "Nadia Hussein. She's dead, isn't she?" The woman didn't answer. She turned and ran off through a door at the back of the room, calling out, "Dr. Jean! Emergency! Room 3! She shut the door behind her, leaving me alone. I stood frozen, staring at the closed door. Behind it I could hear hurried footsteps and urgent commands in a foreign language. Was it too late? How could a child get sick so quickly and die within a couple of hours? It was impossible. It must be impossible. Then I remembered Ma. I stepped back through the outside door. My eyes were still used to the bright lights in the hospital, and the darkness seemed murkier than ever. It took no more than a few minutes to reach Ma. She had hardly moved from where I'd left her. She was standing still, looking round helplessly, completely lost. "Omar," she gasped when she saw me. "Is she... Did you get her there?" I took hold of her arm. "The doctor's seeing her now. Come with me." There's something else in the little room just inside the hospital. A young man who was sitting at a desk, tapping things into a computer. He frowned when he saw us. "This is a children's hospital. We don't treat adults here." He spoke Arabic with an Egyptian accent. "Please, Ma," I said, hurrying up to the desk. "My little girl, Nadia Hussein. My son brought her in a few minutes ago. How is she? Will she be all right?" The man's face softened. "Inshallah, they're working with her now." "Can I see her? I must see her." Ma put a pleading hand down the desk. "She'd be frightened, she—" The young man looked disapprovingly at Ma's muddy hand, which was leaving a dirty mark on the desk. "You'll have to wait," he said. "In any case, you need to clean yourself up. We don't want infections in the hospital." Ma snatched her hand off the desk. "Of course, where?" He pointed to a pair of washrooms. "I'll tell you as soon as I hear anything. Come back here and wait." Why do some hours pass quickly, and others creep by as slowly as water evaporating from a puddle? As the minutes crawled past, I had nothing to do but stare at the white walls and the coloured pins and the crowded notice boards in front of me. Occasionally a door would open, and someone would come into the reception area. Ma would be on her feet at once. "My daughter, Nadia Hussein, what's happening? Tell me, please." The answer was always the same. "She's in good hands. Wait here." At last, when it felt as if we'd been there for a week, a tall European woman who wore a stethoscope dangling round her neck came into the room. "I'm Dr. Jean," she said, holding out her hand to Ma. "Are you Nadia's mother? And who's this?" "Omar," I said out loud, but inside I was yelling at her. "Get on with it. Tell us about Nadia." "Let's go into my consulting room," she said. My heart sank. Why couldn't she just tell us quickly that Nadia was all right? Ma and I sat perched in two plastic chairs facing Dr. Jean in the little room. "There's good news," the doctor began. "Nadia is responding well. She's a very sick little girl, but she'll recover." Ma turned a beaming face to me. "Did you hear that, Omar? Thank God." But I was still looking at Dr. Jean, wondering why she wasn't smiling. "But," Dr. Jean went on, "I'm afraid there's another problem. Have you noticed anything about Nadia that might have worried you?" "Never." Ma was still smiling. "She's such a quiet child. No trouble at all. She wandered out of the caravan today, but only because of a kitten, and—" Dr. Jean coughed to stop Ma's flow. "The thing is, Omar," she began. "She's Musa," I mumbled, embarrassed at having to interrupt her. "Thank you. The thing is that Nadia has a problem with her heart." My own heart missed a beat, and Ma's hand flew to her cheek. "She's had it since she was born. Had the doctor never examined her before?" "A doctor? Why, she's never been ill." Ma was looking defensive. "I told you, she's just a normal little girl." "Not quite normal, I'm afraid," Dr. Jean said gently. "I'm afraid that Nadia's going to need an operation. Quite a big one." We both sat and stared at her, speechless with horror. "A heart operation," whispered Ma. "But we don't have any money. How much do you charge?" Dr. Jean shook her head. "Our health care here is free. But we can't operate on Nadia in this hospital. She needs a specialist surgeon, an intensive care unit." I couldn't hold back any longer. "What will happen if she doesn't have the operation?" I blurted out. Dr. Jean looked grave. "The outcome won't be good." There was panic in Ma's eyes. "What can we do? Where can we go? We're stuck here in this camp. If you can't help us, who can?" "I think I may know the answer." Dr. Jean leaned forward across the table. "Musa, how many people are in your family?" Ma was looking dazed. She shook her head mutely. "There are 6 of us," I said. "My sister, Iman, she's 18. Musa's 16. He's got cerebral palsy. There's me, I'm 15. And Fuad's 8. With Ma and Nadia, that makes 6 altogether." Dr. Jean nodded. "Your brother has cerebral palsy?" She made a note on the pad on her desk. "Can he walk without help?" "Yes, but he needs help doing stuff. He's really clever, though, much cleverer than me." "I'm sure he is." She paused, her eyes on my face. "Omar, there's a hospital in London that could help Nadia. They have specialist surgeons there for her kind of heart condition." "London," I said stupidly. "In England? Nadia can't go all the way to London. She's only 4. "She wouldn't go alone." Dr. Jean was watching Ma now. "You'd all go. I can make an application for visas for you all. In the circumstances, an asylum claim would be likely to succeed." I could barely take in what she was saying. "Asylum? You mean we'd stay there permanently?" There was a knock on the door. A nurse put her head into the room and nodded. Dr. Jean stood up. "Musa, you can see Nadia now. Omar, you should go home. Your brothers and sister will want to know what's happening. Come back in the morning, bring your family's papers, and we'll get things under way. Don't look so shocked. London's not a bad place, you know, in spite of the weather.